Hey guys, it's Chris at Highline Guitars. Welcome to my YouTube guitar building channel. Today on my schedule, I am planning to line the electronics cavity on the back of this guitar with some copper foil shielding tape. And this is a tape that is specifically designed for shielding electronics, which means the adhesive on the back is conductive, and I'll explain more about that in a minute. Now, I'm not really going to talk about how I apply the tape because, well, it is just tape. You cut some pieces, peel off the back, and stick it in there. There's not much else to it. But what I wanted to talk about was the two reasons why I use copper foil for shielding my guitars. I think you'll find that at least one of the reasons is not one you might expect. But I also wanted to answer a question from a viewer who wanted to know if it's necessary to shield all the cavities on a guitar. So first of all, why do I use shielding tape on a guitar? Well, obviously it's to protect the components from outside electrical interference. And that can typically happen because maybe there is an electronic component like a computer or another sound system or lights that may not be wired correctly, or at least in the best way that they could be wired, and as a result they produce a lot of electrical noise which can be picked up by the components in your guitar and then incorporated into the signal, which is sent to the amplifier and then pumped out the speaker. So what you end up hearing is a lot of hum and buzz. And using copper foil to shield the cavity and to shield the electronics is a simple way to help reduce or even eliminate some of that outside electrical interference. And typically what we do is we line the cavity with that tape, and then we also line the back of the control cavity. And as long as the tape on the back is in contact with the tape that's inside the cavity, we have what's known as a Faraday cage. And a Faraday cage is where you completely enclose all those electrical components in a shielded surface that will prevent that electrical interference from getting into the signal. And in order for it to work, that cage has to be grounded. You can't just stick tape into a cavity and expect it to do its job of shielding against the interference. The tape has to be grounded. And that kind of brings up the second reason why I like to use tape, copper foil tape, inside my control cavities. I use it as a ground bus. So what I will typically do is I will run a wire from the ground lug on my jack, and I will solder it directly to the copper foil shielding inside the cavity. And what that does is the ground, the house ground, comes from the outlet through the power cable into the amplifier, and then it goes out the amplifier through the guitar cable into the jack. And then the ground is extended from the jack to the jack plug and directly to the copper foil shielding. That's how that works. Now, of course, this totally relies on having a quality ground in the outlet that you're plugging into. That's why I think a lot of guys who gig in different places all the time will oftentimes take a multimeter with them to check to make sure that the house ground is true ground and that it's going to work properly. Otherwise, that ground isn't going to be transferred to the shielding. It's also a safety issue. But as long as you have good quality ground all the way to the shielding, then anything that touches that shielding is grounded, assuming it's metal. So the housing on your potentiometers, the frame of your switch, any of that stuff, as long as it's in contact with the foil shielding, which is grounded, it becomes grounded as well. So it acts as a ground bus. Now, you got to be careful here, because if you run a wire from your ground lug to the copper foil shielding, You don't necessarily want to run another ground wire from the plug to the back of your pot and then to each of the components. A lot of the wiring scenarios that you see will show that a ground wire will run from the ground lug on the jack to the back of one of the pots, and then jumper grounds are soldered from that pot to the other components. But if you have your copper foil shielding grounded and you're running a jumper wire from each component, you're creating what can be or what is often called a ground loop. And it doesn't always happen, but when you get a ground loop, it can make your guitar excessively noisy, a lot of buzz and hum. So if you've lined your cavities with foil shielding and you're still getting a lot of hum and buzz and that kind of thing when you plug it into your guitar amplifier, you might want to check to see if you've got ground loops. And if you do, resolve them by eliminating them. And you just want to have one source for your ground. And that's why I use the copper foil shielding as a ground bus. If you look closely, you can see that the cavity has been lined with a lot of different pieces of foil. And those pieces of foil overlap one another. That's why you need to have conductive adhesive on the back so that the ground can be conducted to each piece throughout the cavity. Now, as far as foiling all the other cavities in your guitar, the question that came up was, is it necessary to foil shield a tremolo cavity? And in probably 99% of the cases, no, you don't need to foil your tremolo cavity. There's no electrical signal that's being generated in that cavity. Now, you might have wiring from your pickups running through the tremolo cavity into your control cavity, but ideally those wires coming from the pickups should be shielded, and that shielding should also be grounded. If not, if you've just got two plain jacketed wires running through there, then yeah, you might benefit from shielding the tremolo cavity, but I think it would be a lot easier and better just to replace that wire with shielded wiring. So no, you don't need to put copper foil shielding in your tremolo cavity. And as far as like the pickup cavities, you know, you certainly can shield them. It's not going to hurt, but it's probably not going to help much either, because if any part of your pickup is exposed to the air, like, you know, your pole pieces or your slugs, shielding isn't going to help at all. The only way you can shield a pickup is if that pickup has a metal base plate that is conductive and that is connected to a metal cover that is also conductive, and there are no holes for the pole pieces. So your pickup would be completely encased in a metal shield that has no holes in it and is grounded properly in order for it to be shielded. Otherwise, foil lining your pickup cavities isn't really going to accomplish much. So just keep that in mind. You know, you certainly can do it if you want to, but it's a lot of work for very little benefit. So that's basically what I wanted to talk about in this episode. I hope you found this to be a useful episode. And if so, give me a thumbs up. That always helps. If you want to show the channel some support, head over to eguitarplans.com, purchase a plan for either a guitar or one of the tools that I use to build guitars. And even if you don't make whatever plan you purchase, just know that your purchase is helping to support this channel and keep me going. And that means a lot to me. And if you would like to show this channel support but don't want to buy a plan, I've got some t-shirts for sale. You can check out the merch shelf down below. If you can't see it, there's a link in the description to my t-shirt store, so you can purchase the t-shirts there. At any rate, until the next episode, as always, take care, stay safe, and I'll see you soon.